As landscape photographers, we shouldn't be avoiding bad weather. I think we should go looking for it. See, the thing about bad weather is it usually means wind and rain and cold conditions, but whilst they might not be nice for the general public to be out in, they do, as photographers, provide us with probably the most interesting conditions in terms of skies and drama. And as somebody who shoots predominantly black and white, and with film at that, so obviously more grain in there, I like bad weather. I like clouds, I like wind, I like rain, because they give me the atmosphere and the drama which I simply don't get on those traditional sort of nice days when the sun is out and we've got the puffy clouds and the blue skies. So bad weather is something I personally think we should be spending more time going after. Now, to illustrate this point, I'm going to show you a short video from a recent trip Robin and I made. Now, the point of our day out was to actually get some bad weather. We waited until the forecast gave us very, very poor conditions in the Lake District. There was wind, there was rain, there was low cloud. It was very likely we would get soaked, and indeed we did. But we went out prepared for this. We actually expected that weather. So we set off into the hills around the Langdale Pikes, and we basically waited about 6 hours in cafes, to be honest, before we got cracking on. But there were some nice images early on whilst climbing up some of the lower fells from Blee Tarn. I was using XP2 Super in my Nikon F80, so just a basic 35mm camera with a stabilised Tamron lens, quite like this one. It's got a bit of drama in there, lovely definition as well. But as you can see, we had a lot of low cloud. Now, you don't really get a feel for just how inclement the conditions were from the video, but it was cold and it was very windy. And we were struggling to stand up at times, but as you can see, the conditions are beautiful. I mean, this is one with the iPhone just in panoramic mode, so no editing there whatsoever. Really lovely colours for this time of year. But I was predominantly looking for that drama in black and white, so this is one of my early attempts. I shot at a wide angle setting, and I had a yellow-green filter on all day to bring out a bit more definition in those clouds. And XP2 Super, I think, has done a lovely job here. This is just the sort of mood I'm after, although probably not quite as dramatic as I'd hoped for. You see, there's an old saying which is bad weather, good photos, and largely over my many years doing photography, I have found this to be the case. When I've pushed myself to go out in bad weather, a lot of the images I've come back with have been my most memorable. Whereas when I've been out for a beautiful day and everyone says, "Wow, we had a lovely day for photography, Steve," and I've gone, "Yeah, it was a great day," and the images are a bit forgettable, to be honest. I mean, yeah, you can do all sorts of things with puffy clouds and popping that contrast, but everyone does that. And the other thing is, everyone else is out shooting in nice weather. Very few people go out in bad weather. So we continued on up the hillside, braving the winds, as I said, and they were very, very strong winds. So we had to don all our waterproof equipment. Glad I had it with me. And as we got near the top, the conditions got so bad we had to shelter for probably about an hour, covering ourselves up from the worst of the rain. But the forecast was for some clearing on the tops, only briefly, maybe for an hour or so, and we persisted. We hoped it would clear. There was actually no sign of it clearing. At one point we thought we might have to abandon the day. I got a nice long shot here towards the longer end of the zoom with that lovely bit of light breaking through in the background across the hills. Only fleeting, you have to be very quick. So plenty of snackage and breaks, and just sitting around chatting basically, and huddled around like penguins. And we got across to an interesting point on top of Lingmore Fell, which is a beautiful fell overlooking the Langdale Pikes, and we could see the sky was starting to clear. Now this gave us hope finally that we would get the conditions we wanted, which is a clearing storm front with some amazing light coming in behind, and some of the intrepid souls taking pictures on top of a nearby hill. But as you can see, the conditions now were getting really, really windy, but the light had definitely improved. Now, this is the first of the images I really like. This is the sort of stuff I was going after on the day. Short break in the clouds, but we've got plenty of detail up there in the skies, plenty of grit and drama, far nicer than being up there in those lovely warm conditions. But obviously shooting film, I didn't know that at the time. So we persisted in this location because, as I said, the skies were improving all the time, and we had hope for some of those dramatic breakthroughs of light that you sometimes get. Not always, but here Robin standing there trying to hold himself upright. I got blown over a couple of times actually and had to crouch down. But this is one of my favourites, and this is at the wide angle setting on the lens. So I got plenty of foreground detail, and I was shooting at about 1/8 of a second, but stabilised lens gave me f16, and I managed to hold that foreground rock there. This tiny bit of light that came through was finally blasted through a tiny gap in the clouds, and this was probably the only point in the day when the sun broke through really dramatically and gave us those amazing sort of God's rays, the crepuscular rays, which I have enhanced slightly here, but that is pretty much the way we saw it. So I really was getting the most out of the day at this point. Now it's worth mentioning that you're looking at this particular scene thinking, wow, great images, having a great time. But not really. It was very cold and wet, and it was a real struggle, and my gloves were soaked. It was difficult to operate the camera. The whole trip was very challenging, and it's not something at the time which you're particularly loving and enjoying. You're hoping you're getting some good shots, but most of the time you're fighting against the conditions and you're trying to keep the equipment functional. These cameras I'm using aren't waterproof in the slightest, so plastic bag is sitting over the camera most of the time, being whipped off as needed, and I was getting increasingly cold fingertips, so it was becoming quite a struggle at this point. But as I said, the skies had cleared briefly, and this was probably only about a 20-minute patch, so we headed back down because we could see on the weather forecast a really bad front coming in, and we wanted to make the most of these last of the dramatic skies before we were forced off the hilltop. Got quite a nice one here of Bleed Tarn. It was illuminating a field just to the right there, so plenty of atmosphere and drama, and it was getting late in the day, so we were getting some clipping of the sun now cutting across. But I did make the most of my little trekking pole there, even though I had stabilisation, to get the best I could out of the day, and overall I was very pleased with what I got. But look at that beautiful light, beautiful conditions to be out in now, and the wind had actually dried me off somewhat, even though I was now chilled to the bone. Probably the last of the decent images here I took. It's probably not quite as good as some of the earlier ones on the tops, but real atmosphere again. You can see that it's a lot darker now, and we have lost the dramatic light from earlier on, but still very pleased. This is one roll of film, so quite a good result overall. One of the takeaways I have from days out like this is I get images that other people don't get. Now if you go to popular locations at sunrise or sunset, ones which are near to the car and people typically shoot time and time again, when you see an image you will recognise it immediately. You'll say, I know exactly where that is, I know where you stood, and you had some lovely light, and you did a couple of hours and you packed and went home. But I can guarantee you, if you head out into some of these more remote locations, and mainly in bad weather, you'll get images that other people don't get because you don't see other photographers. We saw one other person toting a camera on the day. Had it been a nice day, there would have been half a dozen people up there getting similar shots. So a lot of the shots we were getting can't be repeated because the cloud patterns and the skies don't look the same. But if you go on a nice day, beautiful clear skies or fluffy clouds, it's very difficult to distinguish one photographer's picture from another's. They're all pretty, they're all beautiful, and a lot of it comes down to how you process the image. But the images I got here will be unique. They will be in conditions that won't reoccur exactly like that again. The skies won't be like that. I wouldn't get the breakthrough of light I did in that shot with the crepuscular rays ever again like that. That is a one-off for me. So your photography, I think, will benefit and it will stand out from other people. So if there's one takeaway from this video that I hope you could possibly try out, it is to go out in bad weather. Stick a plastic bag, I use shower caps actually, over my camera, disposable shower caps, and get out there in bad weather. You will get wet, it will be uncomfortable, but you will get images which I'm pretty certain you'll be pleased with. And it may lead you to try some of your more popular locations in different weather. It's well worth a try. Certainly something I need to force myself to do more often. Don't like getting wet, don't like getting cold, but I do like getting good pictures. So I do hope you enjoyed this video and the short excursion into the hills, and I'll see you again on the next one.